Gator Dave joins us. Dave, what's happening tonight, my friend?
How you doing? How you doing, Blake?
We're doing good. Look, I got to ask you very quickly. I know that we've talked about this off air. From an LSU perspective, and we just had a comment on it. Kevin O'Sullivan, the head coach at Florida, his name has come up a multitude of times in reference to the new head coach at LSU. Well, he's at Florida. He's got a top 10 team. Tell the fans, is there really any talk around Florida about Kevin O'Sullivan possibly making a leap if Paul Mainieri retires from LSU?
I don't think there's much of a worry, Blake, only because two reasons. Big powerhouse Texas has come after him and didn't pull him away from Gainesville. South Carolina a few years ago as well. We know the run that they were on not so long ago in the world of baseball as well. Don't get me wrong, LSU is a different monster than historically than South Carolina, probably right up there with Texas if you want to go kind of recent history for college baseball as well. So, I don't think there's much of a worry, only because of turning down those two jobs. That was big in its own right. And it's just got it so easy at Florida right now as far as recruiting goes. I mean, it's just pitcher after pitcher after pitcher. You got that's what he's been known for more so is that rotation. Probably hasn't lived up to the reputation that we thought this year, but historically and going into this year, those guys are still going to be drafted really high as well. Just the way the recruiting machine's working there at Florida, he'd be throwing a lot away. But if you're going to throw a lot away, you're going to throw a lot away for a program like LSU where you can go and do those same things. So I don't think it's orange and blue glasses looking at it. Like, I don't think he'd leave. Would I be surprised? I probably wouldn't be shocked just because it is LSU baseball. But I think he'd be throwing a lot away at leaving Florida when he's already turned down some other big time jobs as well.
Yeah, and Dave, I know that LSU is looking around. I know the 2017 national championship win for him is big. That would put a lot of heat on Paul Mainieri. And look, the last time LSU's played Florida, it's not going in LSU's favor. So that might be a reason why his name continues to come up. But I just had to give you that question out of the gate because, look, Dave, they've been on my ass about it for 3 weeks. And I'm like, look, we hear it, but, let's get Gator Dave in here and to talk about it. But
going from that side, you have to ask. I mean, and you have to be the number one guy. I mean, you have to check the interest and see what's there. So, I think from the LSU side, it's, hey, let's see if he's interested. And we probably have to wait a little while to hear from the Florida side. I think right now we can say, all right, he's turned down two big jobs. More than likely he turned down LSU too, but he's probably going to be the top target.
I think he might be, Dave. we'll wait and see. Let's get to some football talk as we're touring the SEC and now we've made our way to Gainesville. One thing that's interesting and as we covered LSU last season, and they lost a lot of guys in the draft. Florida lost a lot of guys, Kyle Trask, Kadarius Toney, the multitudes of guys, really talented guys. Are you worried at all, like I was a little, of these guys leaving? And really, how is the spring with these new faces coming in for Florida?
I think you have to be worried because, as you said, you lose your pass catchers a bit, and Kadarius Toney's 70 receptions. Never saw that coming. Kyle Pitts, I think we had an inkling that he was going to do what he did last year. He was still more dominant than I've ever seen. Just at that tight end position, that mold of a player, still dominant than at a level that I didn't even see coming. Even though I thought he'd be really good, I didn't think he'd be that good. And then you lose the quarterback at the same time, Kyle Trask. So. I think there has to be worry. It's hard to replicate that in back-to-back years. I think one glimmer of hope, I think you could say for Florida, the question going into last year was how you're going to replace Freddie Swain, Josh Hammond, Van Jefferson. Right. And because of your quarterback, it made it easier to go to a Kyle Pitts and a Kyle Trask, Trevon Grimes on a lower scale. The receiver core was basically carried by Pitts and Toney, and Pitts didn't play in the LSU game, and Toney went nuts, had enough numbers to almost pull it out himself. there with what Florida was able to come back and do that night. But yeah, Blake, I think is asking a lot. But the offense was going to shift in philosophy anyway. This is not trying to replicate. I think LSU maybe in some kind of ways were trying to replicate what they were doing the year before. Florida's not going to. Florida's going to have a completely different offense because of a quarterback that's going to be Emory Jones, who can use his legs as a threat, and a stable of running backs that go 4 or 5 deep, with DeMarcus Bowman now transferring in from Clemson. So it's going to be a change in philosophy at the same time. So you're not asking to Emory Jones, Jacob Copeland, Justin Shorter to replicate and do the same things Kyle Trask, Kyle Pitts, and Kadarius Toney did.
Dave, I don't know how to really ask this because I know it's going to sound probably a little stupid, but do you feel that Dan Mullen shifted his offense to fit Kyle Pitts? Because look, at Mississippi State, even at Florida, he was really run heavy, zone option, motions. And then last season, they were reminding me a lot of LSU in 2019. They threw a ball all over the middle of the field. They were lining up outside the hashes, outside the numbers. You mentioned going back into a change of philosophy. Do you think that last year's success for Dan Mullen offensively will make him kind of rethink maybe we do need to force the ball down the field? With that being said, is Emory Jones, does he have any heat or competition behind him that might push him, and maybe could he be in a little bit of trouble because of the success that Florida had last year?
I'm going to sign off and link to last night's Gators Breakdown episode. That'll tell you everything. So,
okay. All right. Well, let's do this, Dave. Then, if it's on there,
for real, I think we could. That was a good little joke there. We talked a good bit about that last night because I did a YouTube Q&A, and that was one of the pretty much the exact same question. With the success Dan Mullen had in 2020, with that style of offense, what's going to bleed over into 2021 with Emory Jones? And Blake, I go back to the floor for this offense is going to be a Nick Fitzgerald, Dan Mullen, Mississippi State offense. That's the floor. He's going to be as good as runner as that. He's supposed to be a better passer than that. At a high school, Nick Fitzgerald played in a triple option playbook in high school here in Georgia, not far from where I grew up in Georgia. And he wasn't asked to throw the ball a lot. Dan Mullen let him become a passer at Mississippi State when he wasn't that way coming out of high school. So that's the floor. I think that's the absolute floor. I think what you're going to get some hybrid of 2018 Felipe Franks, Dak Prescott, Mississippi State offense. That's what you get. Gator fans hope he's Dak Prescott. That's what you're hoping Emory Jones can be.
Right.
Asking a lot, but I do think you could say, all right, we need a better version of what we saw Felipe Franks in 2018. Much better runner than Felipe Franks. Arm, and we'll find out. And I think we didn't get a whole lot of spring. You guys saw your team in spring. You had a spring game. We had to go by word of mouth. Florida didn't have a spring game. Florida and Kentucky were the only two schools in the SEC not to hold a spring game. Every practice was closed. There was no media allowed at practice. All we got was some short Instagram live videos for like first 20 minutes of practice. We didn't get anything. All we got was word of mouth. So, like, I have a hard time believing sometimes what come out of there, because when it's completely shut down like that, I have a tendency to believe what got out was what the staff wanted to get out.
Right.
And what we heard was Emory Jones struggled with some timing. He struggled with some accuracy. But I know, and Blake, you probably know, what good would it do the Florida offense to work on the quarterback run game in spring practice?
None.
It does absolutely nothing for Emory Jones. It does nothing for the offensive line. It does nothing for the wide receivers. So, of course, they're going to go out there and concentrate on passing the ball. Well, the opposing defense is going to know that. So that's going to make it easier for them. So I do think there's going to be some growing pains. Anybody expecting Emory Jones to go out there and light it up 40, 45 times a game like we saw Kyle Trask do last year? No, that's not. It's going to be a different offense. You got to get this offensive line figured out still, but you're going to rely on a deep stable of running backs to lead the way. And Blake, going to your point too, maybe some competition. I don't think it starts out that way. I think it's Emory's job to lose, but Anthony Richardson probably at some points in the spring was neck and neck with Emory Jones. But I think experience is probably going to win out. And as I said, I think they were tinkering, working on a whole lot of things in spring to help Emory Jones, but help all the quarterbacks, but help Emory Jones get more comfortable as a passer as well.
It's interesting, Dave. We don't see guys, and one thing I'm going to give Emory Jones and guys like Miles Brennan is in today's society, you would have thought Emory Jones would have transferred somewhere, right? I mean, it just happens like that. I mean, he bided his time, and it's going to be interesting to watch. What I'm gonna table a conversation. I'm gonna say, is the SEC going to get back to more run focused style attack? I'm gonna table that right now, Dave, because I want to get to the defense. We talked all season with the Gators twice. We had you on twice, once for the reschedule and once for the actual week that the game was played. This defense struggled a lot like LSU. This defense struggled. Look, I still believe in Todd Grantham from the outside looking in. I saw what he did at Mississippi State and what he's done at Florida at times, but he took a lot of heat. How is this defense looking? How do you think that they will prevail, or how are they looking in spring from what they're telling us, or telling you guys? What confidence or what worries do you have from this defense coming forward?
Confidence is one of the big words. They got to get their confidence back. And I think they lost it very early last year and never got it back. And aggressiveness. You play defensive back at Florida. You play defensive back at LSU. You're expecting, tight man coverage. Look, you play man zone. You mix it up a bit. But when you look at Florida, when you look at LSU, you look at those two defenses, you expect man coverage. You expect physical, aggressive, bump and run, up in your face, trash talking, all that. You expect that type of defense at both of these schools. And Florida missed that a whole lot last year. Like I said, I think that had a lot to do with confidence. I think there was some miscommunication between Todd Grantham and Torian Gray, the defensive back or the quarterback coach of Florida, who's Torian Gray's now at South Carolina. And Florida replaced both of their secondary coaches from a year ago. Speaking of changes here, a lot of people wanted Todd Grantham going. They wanted the LSU route of, hey, I don't care how buddy you are. It was so bad in 2020. Defensive coordinators got to go. Florida didn't get that. LSU got that. Florida didn't get that. Florida did make some changes, though. In comes Wesley McGriff from Auburn. In comes Joel Montanar from USF. And, I think we did hear a little bit more aggressive, probably working on playing some more man defense there. But I just think it's an accountability thing going back to that LSU game. No way, shape, or form. If I was the head coach of Florida or defensive coordinator of Florida, Marco Wilson throws the shoe, he's on the sideline. He's on the sideline. Why he's still playing after that, I have no idea. So I think accountability, but I do think we give, and as you said, you go through this staff from their Mississippi State days, you go through this staff at their Florida days. This staff is really known for their development and how they develop players. They don't recruit as well as Alabama. They don't recruit as well as Georgia. But the development that Dan Mullen has brought to Mississippi State, brought to Florida, speaks for itself. They didn't get that last year. And I say the word accountability. I think they missed that in the spring a little bit because they relied on so many veteran players. They did not have the trust to go to younger players. And I think that was the biggest mistake. They never turned the corner. They never turned the page to younger players because I don't think they didn't trust those players because they missed that spring. They didn't get that time in spring and fall camp to build trust with true freshmen, young redshirt freshmen that didn't get a lot of playing time the year before that. So I think Florida was just stuck in a rut there. There had to be a heart-to-heart with as ugly as it was. It's on players and it's on coaches. But, ultimately it falls on coaches. Todd Grantham stays another year. There had to be a heart-to-heart. It can't be as bad as it was last year. But a marked improvement has to be there.
You bring up a very interesting point there on multitudes of things. I'm just going to use the LSU Florida game. I don't mean this in any kind of way. I don't. LSU did turn that page that you're talking about with Florida in reference to the back five, right? Jay Ward had the interception when Dwight McGlothern, two freshmen, one tipped it back in the air, and then Jay Ward had the interception. The Elias Ricks pick six. I felt like, Dave, that's when the LSU defense, even though they got torched by Ole Miss, but they still had 5 interceptions. That's when they turned the page. Do you think now with Wesley McGriff and some of these new staff members, will they be quicker to rotate guys in and out? I know that Todd Grantham, at times has struggled with doing that. Do you think that has been a big focus this offseason, getting more guys ready to play and having depth at all three position levels?
Yeah, I think we'll see it pretty early too at the other cornerback spot opposite Kyer Elam, who's probably going to be all SEC second team corner probably when the season rolls around. You may have a true freshman starting on the other side of him, a 5-star Jason Marshall. He went through spring. He was an early enrollee, went through spring and really made his mark. I think you look for Jadon Hill, another young guy as well, who did play a bit last year. But as I said, I think you just needed that experience there. So I think they're probably not have much of a choice because I think a change has to be made to get some improvement there. But also at safety, Brad Stewart is gone. Sean Davis is gone. Florida doesn't have much of a choice there at safety, but to play younger guys. We saw Rashad Torrance get some playing time last year. I think he's going to be a big part. Trey Dean, who has played everywhere in the secondary in his career at Florida, found a home at safety last year, got better as the year went on, was battling some injuries at the same time. They're going to look for him. He's going back to safety. So his freshman year, he got thrown in at cornerback. When Marco Wilson went down, they had to throw him in as a true freshman to go play cornerback. The next year, they threw him in at star. When Marco Wilson came back, he really, really struggled. It was not a good fit for him in that star nickel position. So they gave him back his original high school position at safety last year. And you could tell it was probably more of a natural fit for Trey Dean. Now he's going to get that spring to go back and prepare as a safety, which I think is going to be big for him to get that there. So I like the pieces there in that secondary, but so they have a lot to fix. The coaching changes coming in, a lot of community. But the biggest thing going back to last year, how are you so experienced, but they look lost so many times? The communication, the ball snapped, and they're still talking, still trying to figure out what to do. Marco Wilson, Kyer Elam, Sean Davis, Brad Stewart, all those guys, plenty of experience in this defense.
I know.
You can't tell me missing a spring from a defense you've played in for 2 or 3 years made that big of a difference. So I don't know where the communication issues come from. That's a coaching sideline issue as well. But that to me, this past spring had to be number one. At least get lined up. That's half the battle.
Well, and Dave, in man-to-man coverage, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, how can you get? And this was an LSU problem just as much as it was really a lot of places. How are you getting confused in man-to-man coverage? I get Sarkisian and those guys. They do you a lot of motions, and it can get confusing at times. But good God, LSU didn't. I mean, I don't know.
LSU is a perfect example. Florida had 2 outside cornerbacks blitzing on the same play. That's not supposed to happen. I mean, there's one at the top of the screen, there's one at the bottom of the screen, and they're both blitzing from 40 yards away, it seems like.
Oh, man.
How? There's plenty of experience in this defense. Where's the miscommunication? So I hate to pick on them. That's just what it is. But, you got to start somewhere. And, look, the LSU game was like the perfect microcosm of the Florida defense. It's just every issue that we saw all throughout the season was spotlighted in that game.
Well, even Dave too. I mean, I think consistency was another thing. I mean, damn, I thought that Florida, you could make the argument, gave them the best game that Alabama had last season. I mean, they were neck and neck right there with. And I remember you calling it like, "Hey, I know they lost to LSU last week, but watch them go in here and play again." It's going to be interesting. Dave, 2 more questions and we'll get you out of here. We'll let you tell everybody where they can catch all your great stuff in your shows. One, what's the biggest strength for Florida going into this season? Where do you see the biggest strength is? And let's just merge these two together. What is their biggest weakness? I know we've talked about communication, but from a position group standpoint, what's the biggest strength and weakness?
Biggest strength, I mean, that's the conundrum for Florida. You could probably say receiver a bit, but I still think you're still kind of reaching there from what we went back to what we started this with. You lose Kyle Pitts, you lose Kadarius Toney, but you have Jacob Copeland coming back, Jacob Shorter coming back. You had Truett Whittemore, who showed flashes at the beginning of the year before he was injured last year. And then some tight ends, Kamori Gamble, Keon Zipperer, who showed up at times last year when Kyle Pitts didn't get to play after that Georgia game, when he got hit over the middle and had to miss some games after that. I probably would still lean there just because of the pedigree that we've also seen the last couple of years. Hey, there were so many questions last year, but they continued to pass the ball well. So even though I think there's a philosophical shift in the offense, I still think as a position group, I'd probably still look there. That's the thing. I mean, look, I just saw 24/7 put out their top 10 SEC players list. There wasn't a single Florida player on it, and I expected that. I mean, it is what it is right now. With what you lost last year, it doesn't mean there won't be one at the end of the year, but I wouldn't put any Florida player in the top 10 going into this coming up season because I honestly wouldn't know where I would even start there. Kyrie Elam's probably the best player on the team. I don't think he's a top 10 SEC player right now. So I'd probably say that wide receiver, tight end group. Biggest weakness, even though overall the defense was much worse than the offense last year, I still say the biggest position group that needs the most help is the offensive line. It was 2 years in a row now where Florida just cannot bust a grape. Bill King's favorite line there. Can't bust a grape on the offensive line, and still the offense had some success. But there's a philosophical shift coming this year, and the offensive line has to be better. I do think these running backs can help them out a little bit more. When you got the home run threat of DeMarcus Bowman, Lorenzo Lingard, there wasn't enough home run threat with Dameon Pierce, Malik Davis, Naquan Wright. I think those guys do some good things. You saw that in the Georgia game last year. Those guys can play, can make some plays, but I still think Florida overall misses that big home run threat at running back, and I think that can help the offensive line. But they lose Stone Forsythe, they lose Brett Heggie on that left side of the offensive line. They got to get that figured out. They got to create some depth. There's no young guys who have stepped up on the offensive line. They've had to rely so much on older players who really aren't getting it done. And I know a lot of Gator fans are frustrated with Gene DeLance at right tackle. Somebody else got to step up and take the job from him. I mean, if he's the one trotting back out there, it's not his fault. Coach staff's putting him back out there. Somebody's got to go beat him. So offensive line, that they've got to get better in run blocking. I think that's the biggest thing this offense needs to fix because of what's coming up in the shift on the way of playing on offense next year.
He's Gator Dave. Very quickly, just as a former offensive lineman, DeLance is a guard. Okay, just throwing that out there. I think you should kick him inside. That's just me. I mean, Dave in run support, he just does things that I know a guard does. Okay, like I'm like put him inside.
Terrible at pass blocking.
And that's why you don't put that guy at tackle. Let him stay close to the line of scrimmage and hit the dog shit out of somebody. Excuse my language, but because, Dave, very quickly, when he does, I'm breaking down this LSU film because of Max Johnson and us breaking it down, and I watch him in the running game, and I'm like, shit.
Yeah.
Okay. And so
you can point to him like, okay.
And so it's really interesting. If they can figure that out in a running game that Dan Mullen wants to get into, I think that could be interesting. I think that's something to watch out for. Dave, tell all the people where they can find all your shows and all your great stuff. That second question was, by the way, because I went back and watched the show from last night. I stole that question. But tell everybody where they can catch all your stuff.
Okay, everybody can check it out. YouTube, Gators Breakdown lives on YouTube as well. And then also every podcast platform out there, you can check it out. You can follow me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC.
Dave, you're always fantastic, man. We thank you, and look, we got a long summer. It feels like it's almost here, but it's a long summer. I'm sure we'll talk to you soon. But my friend, as always, thank you and have a good night.
Blake, thanks, man.